Hello you lovely lot and welcome to another video. My name's Katie and we're gonna go beyond the box. Specifically the scrawlrbox from August. If you didn't know, we had oil pastels in the August box and they are by Sennelier. We also had two pads of paper with it. One was a scrawlrbox own drawing paper which had a nice smooth surface to it. And the other one, which actually came bundled in with these oil pastels, was the Sennelier 340 GSM oil pastel paper. And I really appreciated actually having so many surfaces to work on there. Now, the reason I thought I'd showcase this paper in a separate video was I actually do prefer, when I use oil pastels, to use a larger surface in general. And this is because I am a devil for the details sometimes, and of course the chunkiness of these pastels combined with a small surface to work on doesn't quite allow me to do that. However, I do find a little way around that, so keep watching if you want to find out how. Now, I decided to try and keep with the water theme that was in the August box, and I thought I would create a water spirit character here as our vessel. The greeny blue was perfect to add as a base layer for the hair, as well as that deeper, darker blue to add in those tonal details there. Now, one of the main things I noticed about this paper, which was the Sennelier, compared to the scrawlrbox's drawing paper, was the texture. As I was applying the oil pastels directly to the page, I definitely felt a little bit more feedback. I guess that's the best way to describe it, as I was dragging the pastel across the page. And obviously the mark making was quite different too. It clung to the textures there, and obviously it left gaps behind where the pastel just didn't sink into the paper enough. I actually quite liked that, but that meticulous side in me just wanted everything nice and smooth and pristine, which is why the blending stump that was provided was just perfect to move the pastel around on the paper without actually filing my finger down instead. Plus, I don't really like to use my fingers to blend with, to be honest, it's just bleh. One of the other things that I noticed whilst blending these oil pastels out though was it was a little bit more hard work, if I be honest with you. I actually appreciate how it hung on to the vibrancy, but as far as smushing it around on the page was concerned, it presented a little bit more of a challenge. I had to find that I needed to reapply the pastel in areas just to make sure I'd got a good level of coverage there before continuing on with extra details. You'll also see where I added those tonal details on her fringe and on the rest of her hair. I couldn't really extend those lines out as easily either. Now, these aren't criticisms, this is just one of those things where I have to look at this medium in a different way and my approach to it for future projects. And speaking of approaches, I decided for her facial details and tonal variations there, I'd take a slightly different approach and actually, you could say, prime that area with the white oil pastel we had before just ever so slightly adding those details in, just a little bit at a time there. My reason for doing this was if I'd got a layer of white down, then that was going to move around on the page a little bit easier, so when it came to adding those colours on there, I did find that I could get a bit more of a smoother gradient and just add a little bit of shape and form in there. For the more intricate areas, where I like to do the details, I did actually find that by removing a little bit of the oil pastel using the blending stump, I could add it in a smaller area without having these big chunky lines everywhere. I also found that using this technique or approach, it just allowed me to extend some of those line details on the hair and just soften those hard edges which were there from the original application of these oil pastels, and it did help a little bit. Now, it's quite interesting actually to be able to have a variety of surfaces to use these oil pastels on, and I guess it's all down to preference and how you find your way with these as to which ones you're going to turn to the most. As you've seen throughout the channel, I have dabbled with oil pastels a little bit this year and I still wish to continue doing that, and obviously I'll share the journey as I go along. But it got me thinking, I actually have some oil paint paper which I bought ages ago in one of Jackson's wonderful paper sales, thinking that I would pick up the oil paints and start playing about with those again. However, oil painting is quite a hefty setup, plus I have to take into consideration the horrible chemicals it gives off, and I just keep putting it off. But it's got me thinking, I wonder if this oil paint paper would actually be quite suitable to use with the oil pastels. And let me know down below if you want me to explore that. I'll be honest with you, it's not going to be anytime soon because obviously we have Inktober to get through first, but if you do want to see how that works out and want me to share that with you, I'd greatly appreciate you letting me know down below. Now, I really wanted the eyes to pop on this because this was getting to be a very blue picture, which is fine, but you know, I like to have a little pop of contrast in there. So using the yellow with that yellow ochre for the eyes, as well as the detail on her ears with the fins there, I thought that just added a little bit of something extra to the piece. And again, lifting the oil pastel actually off the pastel with the blending stump worked really well for that. You'll also notice as well, whilst I've been working with this piece, that the the surface underneath what I'm working on, I actually placed a piece of scrap paper there, and every time I needed to clean the blending stump, I'd just drag it across there until there was no residual oil pastel and we were good to go again. I also found as well that the point would eventually wear down on the stump, so if you've got any fine grained sandpaper there, once you've cleaned the nib of your stump on your regular paper, you can sharpen it again on the sandpaper just to make sure you've got that nice point so you can get all those delicious details in there. For the background, I really wanted the foreground to stand out, so I just went for a simple black background there. And again, it surprised me really how much I had to go back in there using those oil pastels to ensure that I had a relatively good amount of coverage there when it came to blending. You'll see that I'll chop and change in between using the blending stump as well as adding a bit more oil pastel as I go along, but eventually it did work out okay, and I was relatively happy with the level of detail and crispness that I could achieve with the oil pastel there. Of course, I was reaching a stage though where no matter how delicately I lifted oil pastel off with the blending stump, I just couldn't quite get those details in there that I wanted. So that is why the pencil that was also provided in the scrawler box came in super handy for that. With it being 5B, it was a nice soft and deep dark lead, and that just meant the transition between the detailed areas and the areas where I'd added the black, for example, it worked out quite well, and it ensured that I could get those beautiful delicate details in there around the eyes as well as the ears and some of the hair details there too. And once I'd started to do that, I was beginning to be quite happy with how this piece turned out. For some reason, it's created quite a nice striking expression on her face there, and I kind of like that. It worked out really well, and it was super good just for tidying up areas, for example around the fringe, and as I mentioned earlier, just adding a few more hair details in there too. I know I probably said this on the unboxing video for this particular box, but I'm actually really glad that Scrawler was brave enough to put something like oil pastels in a box. They are a bit of a tricky medium to get your head around, but on the other hand, once you do get your head around them, they are actually quite a fun and relaxing medium to use, and I love the vibrancy you get from oil pastels. It also helped as well that the pastels themselves were really good quality, and we had a number of surfaces to work on, which I always think's great. I'm sure moving forwards I'll probably get some more use out of these, but alas, it is time to get back to the ink. But I do hope you've enjoyed watching this video, and I hope you found it useful too. There's some wonderful things on screen right now I think you should click, and if you haven't already, why not hit that subscribe button too. In the meantime, I want to say thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you lovely lot soon. Bye!